Hello and welcome to the gallery. My name is Jon and today we'll be painting the Ogroid Myrmidon from Warcry.
Warcry.
Now this will be the final Warcry video for a little bit. I will delve into it probably more in the future because, well, I like the game. But for now, let's leave it for a little bit because I have other aspirations on the horizon. Today we'll be painting the Ogroid Myrmidon in a much more delicate fashion than I've been doing recently. This is not a speed paint job by any means, but neither is it competition level stuff or anything like that. This is just a little bit extra here and there just to give it a little bit of extra look to it so it looks a bit better on the table. This is a big model comparatively to other Warcry models, so we're going to give him a little bit more love. There will be some contrast paint used, but this is not a contrast paint base coat with a little bit of extra highlights here and there. This is more working from darker colors to lighter colors or thereabouts. So let's just start painting him and see where it goes. We're starting out from a fairly light primer. I'm using Skeleton Bone from Vallejo, which is a really nice bony color. And then we're going to start with the skin. We're going for a more purpley hue than the box art is. So we're starting from this, and then we're just going to layer in different types on top of this purple fleshy hue. And I think it's gonna look pretty damn good because I'm going for a different look than the box art is. It's gonna take 2-3 thin coats just to get a really good base coat down, and then we're gonna continue on, and all the skin we're just gonna draw these lines atop the skin to get both the muscle texture and a little bit of fur feeling going on, so it doesn't look like he's too smooth or anything like that. We're going for a different look than I'm used to painting, trying out something different, and I think it'll look okay in the end result. I mean, I can use a little bit more practice in this method, but it's a fun thing to do, and also it saves up on time from shading and everything like that, although I will have to use some shade, but I say saves up because this takes a hell of a long time. I found out while I was doing it. But it was fun to do something completely different and get a different look, and he stands out on the board compared to all the other guys that are slightly more just contrast paints with a little bit of highlight. Then it's Birch from scale 75 again, and just getting a little bit of highlights here and there, just on the tops of things, on the edge of mountains, edge of muscles, just to get a little bit more highlight, and also working on the tail, just dragging it here and there, getting some texture to it as well on the smoother surfaces. And these are fairly thin, so they will mix together when they're on, even though they look thick when they're going down. On the tips of everything, getting a little bit of this, so you get this feeling of him being, well, more three-dimensional than he is, and he is quite three-dimensional, but just getting all the flat surfaces looking a little bit more interesting. We're going to put this also on all the scars, and we will work further on the scars later on. Then we'll put some shade around them and stuff like that. I think this could be a very interesting way to do something fun with these bigger models. Just have them look that's slightly more different and more focused than the warbands. And it's just like with commanders when you're painting Age of Sigmar units or HQ units or something like that. Putting a little bit of extra into them gives them that little extra oomph. A little bit of Nuln oil that I'm putting just here and there just to make the shadows a little bit deeper. Like I said, I use a little bit of shade here and there just to give it some extra definition. We want them to look really, really nice. And then into all the scars, I'm using white from Vallejo, an airbrush white, and it'll really flow into all the crevices, so we can put something lighter in there to make it look popping a little bit. And I was going for a red glow effect later on in this. It still looks a little bit more like wet blood, but that's okay too. That looks okay. So I wasn't really too bothered about that. And this white color, it really, really flows nicely. I use it quite often where I really want to get crisp white into crevices. So for perhaps eyes, but then of course you have to be quite careful with them because it can go out of hand because it has such a great flow. Just dotting the eyes and of course having it go a little bit astray. Next we're using these high vibrancy inks from scale 75. I'm putting that into all the white that we put down earlier, and it looks really, really interesting, and it breaks up the monotony of the purple skin and everything like that. It makes it a little bit more popping where we put this down. And because it's such a deep groove on these scars, you can really put a lot in and it'll flow into it. Even the ones that went a little bit overboard still flow into it a little bit. And then the same line, the intense lime, putting that into the eyes, and that makes the eyes really, really interesting green. Much more interesting green than if I would say use a contrast paint for it. Because of course inks, and well, this is not technically inks, it's more like shade / ink. It really lies on the surface in this case, so the eyes become really, really cool. Then working on the scars, having a little bit of red around them to make them a little bit more wounded, make them a little bit more, old and like the skin is strained. We can also put this around the bigger scars / wounds / symbols on him, just to give a little bit of extra something around them, just to have them look a little bit more strained on the skin, like I said before. Well, it's the only word that's popping into mind at the moment, so I'm going to use it. And using it also on the scars underneath. Have a little bit of the white that was still around, just to have the strain further from the skin, so it's the bruising. And then to get a little different tone to his hair than his body, I'm just using a purple shade, and I'm putting it all over the hair. It will flow into the recesses, of course, like shades do, and it will also color the rest of the hair in a little bit different hue than the skin. So it works well with him. It becomes a little bit more purple than him. He is more dark-skinned with a purple hue to it, but the hair will become quite purple. And for the hoofs, and this will be also for the claws, I'm putting down a dark gray and then working up to a lighter color in the same fashion that I did the skin, just focusing more from the top, from the front of the hoof to get a little bit more light there, so it's darker near the leg. And we're using the same method we did for the skin, like I said, just putting it down, dragging out a little bit, getting some streaks going, and it looks okay. I mean, this is a method I'm not used to using, these kind of dragging lines to get a different look, but I might use it quite a lot more, especially for these natural surfaces. Don't know, I've seen it a lot on metallics and on similar surfaces to that, and if you're going for scratches or it is your style, of course, then it looks really, really good. But it's not really my cup of tea, so I can use this for flesh surfaces and similar items like that, maybe cloth, but for the metallic surfaces I'm still going to use my usual method. Now for the mouth, I'm using just a quite simple method. I mean, you could do a hell of a lot with that, but I didn't feel like it. Just pink and then a little bit of contrast paint over it, and you get the mouth done. I mean, we're only seeing his tongue, so I wasn't really too worried about it being too flashy or interesting. Teeth, we're putting some effort into it. We're putting down a base coat and then a highlight, a little bit of brown. You can use whatever brown you want. I used flat earth because I had it next to me. And then just a little bit of bone color on top of that. And then perhaps if you want a hint of white on the end of the teeth, if you want them to look a little bit more shiny. But
this and the brown undercoat is quite enough, because then you get this look of old teeth. Straight over the base coat, I'm just putting some skeleton horde. I know this is a little bit darker of a base coat than if you would use, say, Wraithbone, but most of this model is a little bit on the darker side, and also we're gonna shade these horns down and get them really, really dark in some spaces. Also on the actual handle of the weapon, it's the only part we're starting that's not part of his natural body. There we're putting some skeleton horde as well, and we're doing it a little bit differently. Putting it in the end and then just dragging it out a little bit, and then we're gonna put even thicker coat of skeleton horde and drag it back and forth, so we get this ash white wood feeling to this. Could be bone, highly unlikely because it's fairly straight, but we're getting this interesting wood grain texture going on the handle, which I truly like and felt quite necessary. Now that all the horns have dried, because this was a lot of contrast paint on them, we're starting with some Nuln oil, and we're focusing where we're putting it. We're just not slathering it all over. We want the ridges of the horns to stay the color they are, and we're starting from the tip and working our way back into the recesses, especially underneath and where the horns meet, where they turn, and we're putting down 2, 3, 4 coats, always a little bit thinner and in a little bit closer to the actual tips of the horns, just to get some darkness to them and getting them looking quite interesting. And I think it's working out quite okay. Then just bone white. The horns are perfect for dry brushing because they're just straight ridges that are going in one direction. So dry brushing a little bit over that, so the shadows stay dark and the horns stay somewhat bright on top and look quite striking. And of course we have different types of horns on the side, so we have to focus a little bit different when we're going for that. It's just not back and forth. You have to find out where the ridge of the horn is so you can follow it.
Now that we painted up all the natural bits of him, the skin, the bone, everything like that, let's work on his clothing and his weapons and see where that goes. If you would like me to paint more Warcry models in the future, definitely put some comments underneath what models you would like to see, be it a warband, be it some different monsters, some different heroes or mercenaries or something like that. Throw a comment underneath and let me know what you would like to see, so I know what I should do.
Now let's start working on his outfit, because we've done everything natural about him, well, unnatural about him, all his skin and everything. So let's start working on the cloth and keeping it a little bit out of focus. We're starting by putting down some thick dark red on the cloth, which we will be layering up from. A little bit of flat earth, and we're stippling this on. We're getting this kind of worn look to the outfit. We're not just dragging it and getting a nice clean highlight. We're stippling and slicing and getting some weird textures going on the cloth to make it look a little bit more worn and a little bit more ragged. And in most cases when I'm painting red, I start with a dark red, then a little bit of a lighter red, and then end up with orange. And I try to keep the orange on the thinner side unless I'm doing actual flames, just so the red can shine through the orange and we're just getting the red a little bit lighter and not painting it actually orange. And we're doing this scratchy format on all the highlights and scratchy format on all the edges and everything like that, not just dragging it along, because we want it to look a little bit more natural and a little bit more worn as a cloth. For all the leather, which there are quite a lot because he's wearing this weird harness, I'm using just a dried bark. Whatever dark brown you want, of course you can use. It's just the same, and we're not going for any specific look here. We're just going for a fairly natural, kind of realistic look. I mean, I'm not painting this as a competition piece by any means, then I would spend a hell of a lot more time on it, but I'm trying to get something nice down, and then just highlighting that with quite a lighter color, but keeping the color quite thin. So when it dries, it will mix okay with it, and these scratches on the leather give it this cracked old look, which is the main theme of this character. Cracked and old, kind of like me. And then some null oil in the recesses just to get that extra shade that we lost while we were putting the white, if it went a little bit abundant or anything like that. And also around the belt if we feel like it, because we've already done it, but here and there we might want a little bit more shadow just to get some extra definition between the skin and the belt. I'm not inventing any wheels here. Again, with the metallics, I have a standard method for metallics which I almost always use, and this one is no different really. Putting down some really bright silvery color on everything that's supposed to be steel or iron or silver, and then putting down a fairly rough sketch of where I want the gold bits to be. But there are fairly few gold bronze bits on this model, but the silver bits, the metallic iron bits are quite a lot, because he has buckles everywhere, and of course it's time to start working on his shield as well, because that's only metallic, so I hadn't put any base coats on that while I was painting the actual guy. Although I could have done the skulls when I was doing the horns, but you live and you learn. And then some brass scorpion. It's a very interesting color. It's a little bit darker in hue from the regular gold colors, because of course it is brass, but I like the look of it. It gives it a more natural and more aged look. It just got to be a part of it, so I'm kind of happy about that. And of course the belt, we're going for the gold feeling to that. And after we've done all the shading and the highlighting of the metallics, it will look a little bit different. I mean, it's not going to look like shiny brass with shiny silver, which is not the look that would fit this guy, I think. But just putting some base coats down and spending some time around the edges so everything will look okay, nothing will be clashing too much. And then we're going for my regular method for metallics, using basilicanum gray mixed with contrast medium, and just putting that all over both the bronze and the silver to get some shade going and making it look worn. On flatter surfaces like the spear tip, you really have to drag it, otherwise it'll look splotchy and kind of marbling, which is not necessarily a look you want. But the thing I like about this shade, the contrast shade, about having it basilicanum gray and contrast medium, because it is a light color, it works well on metallics, but it will still make everything look okay if it goes a little bit overboard and spills here and there, because it's not a vibrant shade, or, well, it's not a high tone shade or anything like that. It'll just make a little bit of extra shadow here and there, but won't go overboard. And then for the gold, auric armor gold or bronze, whatever you feel like. Auric armor gold, just a quick dry brush over the tips, because later on when we're doing the silver, we will also add a little bit of silver to this dry brush, and that'll make it look even more worn. So silver on the auric armor gold, as you can see, it really tones down the goldness of it, but gives it this really old metallic look that is kind of cool, and makes you know it's not silver or steel, but it is something that probably was fancy once upon a time. And then, because it was feeling a little bit too nice, actually, after everything that we've done, some Agrax earth shade just here and there. I'm not coating it in it. It's not a recess shade. It's just a spot shade here and there, just to give it a little bit of brown undertone and a little bit of extra shadow here and there, and a little bit more wornness if you want. And especially on the shield, it is quite necessary to have this extra little thing here and there.
Okay, the boy is ready, but now he has a lot of stuff going on his base since I decided to put extra stuff on his base because it was a bit on the flat side. So let's throw some paint on that in a quick-ish fashion that fits sort of with the other models and leave it at that.
Now, since the guy is actually done and I went bonkers with the base, let's paint up the base because I felt he needed to have something more interesting to stand on than just a flat base, because it's a centerpiece model for the board, sort of. So we're just putting some Agrax stone on the main base and then undiluted basilicanum grey on all the rocky bits. And it's okay if they mix a little bit, so I do this immediately after I put the Agrax stone, because it'll just merge them a little bit more and make it a little bit more natural. However, I would warn against using this method if you have them lying just in the pot still, because you could get some grey into your brown, and that's not nice, or brown into your grey. And then skeleton horde over all the bones and all the horns of the helmet I put down there. And at this point, I also put some skeleton horde on the thing, the stuff, the skulls on his shield. That's the word I'm looking for. I had a small brain fart there. And then retributor armor on some of the gold bits on the base, and silver on the helmets and the spikes in the back and everything like that, just to have some extra fluff on the base. I put some cocktail pins in there that I carved up, and an old helmet and some skulls, because it's Citadel, you gotta have your skulls, you can't miss them. Then Black Templar on the helmets, just to get this Chaos Warrior black look going on them with some shiny details. And that's not too complex of a work to do. I use this for most of my Chaos Warriors. I put them in a shiny silver armor and then put Black Templar over it, and you get this old black armor, which is really cool. And then to merge everything a little bit better together, some Agrax Earthshade. And I'm trying to keep it focused on the actual ground bits, the brown earth bits, but it's okay if they go a little bit into the grey of the rocks, because it'll merge it better together. Trying to skip putting it on the actual skulls, because we want them looking slightly different from the earth. Then over everything, over all the ground, both the earth and the stones, some Karak stones. It'll merge it again together and also give it a little bit more depth and highlight to it, because of course dry brushing often does give highlight. That's the idea about it. And at this point I was feeling that this base was looking kind of nice, but it has a few details that are still a little bit off. I mean, the stone was a little bit too bland, so some administratum grey, which is quite a light grey tone. Just dry brushing that really quickly over all the stone that was grey, just give a little bit of extra highlight to it. And then it was starting to look okay. Just the skulls and the helmets and stuff like that left to do. So bone white on the skulls and Bob's your uncle. And as you can see, I'm not spending too much time on focusing on the base. It's a base. I mean, it's fun to have them looking pretty, but if you're spending all your day working on the base, the model starts to lose focus. It's supposed to be something underneath the model, not something that is the main idea. So some tufts here and there, just to have it look some more natural, and of course blood. I mean, this is a raging monstrosity plowing through enemies, so he's gonna have some blood on it. I'm putting it on the weapon. I'm also putting it on the shields from all the spikes on that, and he's probably been slamming the shield into people. So, and also just give this a cool look to have this two awesome gashes of blood on the shield, and of course a little bit of blood on the base as well, because the ground is soaked and well oiled in blood. And here we have an Ogroid Myrmidon. I thought this model turned out quite okay, and it works well on the board. He has a similar look to the rest of the army, just more focused. So, thank you very much for joining me here today. There are links in the description for all kinds of stuff, social media and various tidbits. You do with it what you will. Like, share and subscribe, and hit the little bell notification thing, and let the colors flow. But until next time, farewell.